Greetings and welcome. This is episode 3 and we're coming out strong, and it's going to be a wet morning here in Edinburgh, Scotland, and we're going to get on with our business and we're going to enjoy it. I've got a fella in a black Hyundai following me up Chase, close on my heels, hot on my heels, but he's just another member of the commuting community, so I don't really feel threatened or worried. I hope he's doing okay and he's not stressed out on a Monday. Actually, it's a woman, excuse me. It's a woman. Well, I have the same feelings towards her and I hope she's doing alright. So, what's been going on? At the UFC this weekend, it was good. It was, I was expecting a serious amount of scumbags there, given the nature of the sport, and there wasn't as many as I thought. There was a lot of armchair experts, that's for sure. Fat boys with ridiculous opinions, a couple of times queuing for pints. I heard lads talking absolute garbage, Paul choked a lad out last week. You ever choke a lad out? So fucking easy, isn't it? And just mad talk, and but it was cool. At one stage there was some fella in the toilets was just pouring blood out of his face, so he must have gotten some sort of altercation, and then the cops swooped in after, but I was gone out of there at that stage. And obviously there was a major mismatch in the male to female ratios of attendance, and the men's toilets were just fucking jammers, so lads just started going into the women's toilets, and which I frowned upon at the beginning, but I'm ashamed to say that towards the end of the event I was also a part of the problem, and I went in there to do my little bit of business. But at one stage some fella comes out of the women's toilets, and this big fat Scottish lad's like, "Hey mate, my fucking board is in there." And then the guy who came out of the women's toilets just like, "Man, relax, it's a fucking toilet." And he was right. The gentleman was right. But I suppose he wasn't the correct gender for that specific toilet. But however, the fights were good. Scottish fighters did very well. There was some fantastic knockouts in the prelims. The main event, Michael Bisping, was a heap of fucking shit. As per usual, just Michael, soft hands Bisping, with just jogging around the cage, peppering the guy with he could have thrown tissues at him and it would have probably hurt him more. But whatever, it was great to finally go to an event. I've been watching them now for years, and it was great to finally go. We had good seats and you could watch the stand-up action. You got a good feel for what was going on, but as soon as I hit the deck or was up against the cage, I had to look up at the screen because I just hadn't a clue what was going on. I couldn't tell what the details of what lads were doing. But it was good, and Paddy Houlihan, the hooligan, he won a decision. He had some guy in deep in a triangle choke, extremely deep, with his arm across, all locked up nice and tight, but the guy just wouldn't tap. The guy was managed to throw some major haymakers at him and survived. Some people just can't be tapped. They've got pencil necks or some shit, and it's very difficult to choke them. And evidently this gentleman was one of those. So then there was a couple of Scottish fighters. Scottish Bird, Joanne Calderwood. She was in a real war. She got performance of the night, 50 G's. Looked like a great striker, but pretty much clueless in the grappling exchanges, which doesn't bode well with women like Ronda Rousey out there, who just tear the arm off her and bust her up. What else to report? Went climbing yesterday in the indoor climbing gym, and very tough sport, very difficult, very humbling. You run out of juice in your, well, I do, in my forearms and grips pretty lively. And I was aware of that, so I was like trying to put everything through my muscular and gristly, powerful legs. But, you know, easier said than done. And keeping your hips close to the wall, all that kind of stuff is it's all difficult little nuanced tactics that can really help preserve your grip strength. But, you know, it's tough. It's pure chess. Climbing is very much a chess game of like picking an efficient route and going up the, not painting yourself into a corner like a fucking dork, like what I was doing. I did enjoy it, and it's something that I think would really help grappling. So I might think about it, especially if I get hurt. It's probably a good sport to do if I ever pick up a neck strain or some bullshit. But that's the latest. That's the latest scoop on what happened this weekend. Had a good few bevies. Yesterday I went to a whiskey tasting thing, and that was great because I learned a few bits and pieces about whiskey and how it is distilled, like what single malt whiskey actually means. And I actually drink whiskey quite frequently with no knowledge of anything to do with whiskey. And I learned that you should never have whiskey like chilled whiskey on ice, which I drink all the time, because you are, I don't know exactly what's going on chemically, but what you're doing is whatever phenols or whatever that are in the whiskey that give it its taste, or esters, I'm not sure what they're called, those things are kind of closed off if the temperature is too low, so you don't really get the full flavour of the whiskey. But if it's at room temp, then you've got like the full flavour and everything opens up, and you have the full experience. And most popular whiskies, high street, or not high street, but stuff like Tesco and Asda, or like Glenfiddich or Jack Daniels, Jim Beam, like all that shit, they're all blended whiskies, which are made from a big variety of different casks. And you might ask, well, how on earth do they manage to maintain a consistent taste while using a variety of different casks? Good question, and the same question that I had inside my brains when I was being told this at the tasting. But how do they do it? Do they have a testing machine? Do they somehow chemically analyze the ingredients of each whiskey? No, they don't. They have a master smeller, and this person who nowadays it's predominantly women, because they've got a keener sense of smell, a keener schnoz, and these master smellers are able to tell, just by having a good hard smell, what is missing, what is required to maintain the consistency of a Glenfiddich. And that could mean, they have to sign contracts saying that they're not going to booze, they're not going to smoke, they're not going to drink, they're not going to do anything that may potentially reduce the quality of their palate. So apparently it's an extremely prestigious position, and very technical, and I guess I don't know enough about how consistent they are, because whiskey kind of tastes like whiskey to me. But yesterday at the tasting we had 4 different whiskies alongside each other, and then it was immediately obvious the little nuances in between each one. But what does grind my gears somewhat is the explanations of the whiskey. It's just like, I find like a hint of vanilla in this, and maybe even lavender honeysuckle, an element of autumn lavender honeysuckle. And then as soon as somebody tells you that, you're like, oh yeah, really, this is like a kind of like a burnt dark chocolate there in there, is there? And as soon as people start fucking pumping these ideas into your head, and you're like nodding along like some fucking moron. So it's kind of hard, it seems to me to be very subjective, to like the descriptions on the back of all the whiskies, it's it's a bit suspect in my eyes. But then again, I'm just some chump off the street who puts fucking ice in his whiskey, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But that's the one thing I took away from that tasting is no more ice in the whiskey, a little bit of water, and then you swoosh it around in a cylindrical style spiraling fashion, and that allows a little bit more oxygen in throughout the liquid, and that also helps open up the flavors. So that being said, that brings us to the end of episode 3. I wish you good fortune on your way, and Godspeed in all and your endeavours, and certainly if not all of them, I wish Godspeed to you in most of them. Okay, be good.